Welcome to the Randy Karraker Show on STL Sports Central. STL Sports Central presented by DraftKings, where the crown is yours. This show normally features Brooke Grimsley, Matthew Rocchio in for the mom, Brooke Grimsley. She's out on maternity leave. And we've got some stuff coming up. Bernie at the bottom of the hour. He's always great. Always fun to talk to him. He was out and about with Will Leach, who's got a new book out. So that's cool. And we get to talk about the Cardinals. We get to talk about the NHL draft. Heck, even St. Louis City SC, Houston Dynamo making their way to take on St. Louis City SC.
It's going to be a hot one down in Houston, and it's going to be a tricky one because they are coming off of a short turnaround, and everyone's tired. They had to run a lot.
The Cardinals are coming off a short turnaround, too. They played in St. Louis yesterday, dropped another one to the Cubbies, play in Cleveland tonight, and game's on Apple TV. So sorry about that. I don't know. Come on, Rob Manfred. You're better than this.
Is he, though? I mean, we kind of have the proof, though. Is he?
Yeah. Well, they're making money. They're making money.
Okay. Are they?
They're making, a lot of money.
All right. That's good. They don't have a TV deal right now, so they need to be making money.
Well, they're going to he's working on the TV deal.
There you go.
Anyway, the Cardinals did drop the last two and split with the Cubs, and we'll play the Cubs again next weekend, 4th of July weekend in Chicago. And the Cardinals 3 hits yesterday. They lost 3-0. And by the way, Shoto Imanaga is really, really good. So he's going to shut out a few teams. But the Cardinals got their hits from Mason Wynn, Alec Burleson, and Garrett Hampson. And the lack of right-handed hitting of Ivan Herrera and of Jordan Walker is hurting the club right now against the two left-handed starters. Burleson got his hit yesterday later in the game. Against the two left-handed starters, the Cardinal left-handed hitters went 1 for 14. They were 1 for 8 against Boyd on Wednesday night. Gorman had the only hit. And then yesterday, 0 for 6 were the Cardinal left-handed hitters against Imanaga. So you're kind of missing out when you don't have Walker, who had been red hot. We talked about it yesterday, and Herrera. When you don't have those guys in the lineup and it's not happening for Contreras and Arenado, you got real problems.
And I think the big thing for me wasn't just that you're getting worn down by a very good starter. It's Gorman looking at that pitch to end the game against a relief pitcher. That's something. And listen, the Cubs relief pitching is really good. They went on that run, that incredible, was it 70 inning run? I think it was in May, and I think it was into June. Their bullpen without allowing a run, so they have a good bullpen. But and Jim Hayes earlier on Lou Info today, point out, hey, the Cardinals have hit good pitching, but I think also there's a point where if you go into those games, it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of those wins against good pitching came with some runs later against the relief pitching behind the good pitching, and it was disappointing that they couldn't break through it all, and they had chances. And man, I thought that one shot, I think was that a Gorman or Burleson hit that Pico Armstrong tracked in the 8th. I thought that one was gone off the bat. Yeah, I thought that Burleson hit was gone off the bat. And then literally the downside 12, 15 minutes later, when Gorman just sees that one to end the game. God, that was a bummer.
It's when the guy's throwing 100, sometimes it's hard to pull the trigger, I think, for some of these hitters. And Joe Torre used to tell us when he was the Cardinal manager, this game is hard.
I do think that perspective is necessary sometimes. I don't think fans ever like to hear it, but I do like sometimes when they break down that thing, and that's why I always quote I think it might be Gene Stallings, because I originally pulled that from Doug Vaughn, who used to always quote they's on scholarships too, where because I love it it's just because it was a college coach who was just like, guys, like, can we get a little bit of perspective for a moment in the most down-home way ever?
Yeah. The Cardinals 4.5 back in the NL Central. They're at Cleveland tonight. Guardians 9-13, by the way, in June. They're in second place in the AL Central. Sonny Gray goes against Luis Ortiz, who's a right-hander. So that helps with the Cardinals. And we'll see whether or not Nootbaar is back in the lineup. He had a shot for an intercostal strain, apparently, and hopefully he'll be back in the lineup tonight.
I was just happy to find out that piece of information. Obviously, it was a bummer for Newt, but as somebody who I think maybe if you go back and watch us online yesterday, as the lineup came out, was visibly concerned as to what was going on, that Lars Nootbaar didn't get either of those two games and Hampson was going to get both. And so it was very illuminating to get that piece of information as to why we had seen the lineup the way it was in both of those games.
And a 6-month season is happening now. Walker with an appendicitis after the wrist inflammation, Newt with an intercostal strain. There are going to be injuries. I think one of the more remarkable aspects to this team so far is that we're more than halfway through the season now. We're 82 games in, 82 games in. Yeah, 80 to go.
Yeah.
And this is made of wood, right?
I got you over here.
The Cardinals still have not placed a pitcher aside from Zach Thompson on the IL, which is pretty remarkable.
That didn't sound like wood.
I think it is wood, though.
That didn't sound
like plastic.
Maybe. Okay. Well, okay. Either way, we're covering our bases.
Yeah, but the fact that the Cardinals have been able to maintain the health of their rotation and their bullpen so far is amazing to me. And there is a method to the madness that they've used. They've got data, and a lot of the things that we don't like, not using guys, taking Eric Fetty out when he's throwing a no-hitter, having the bullpen, the Memphis shuttle, a lot of the things that we and y'all like to complain about are a big part of the reason I think that the team is not having to put players on IL. I was about to say the team is succeeding, but they're 4.5 games out.
Yeah, what you guys need to do if you're not doing it already is go to stlsportscentral.com and just make sure you just read everything that Bernie writes on there, because it's all fantastic. And that's something that he's mentioned a lot, but I also, he was throwing out the number, and the Cardinals starters right now are averaging, I think it was 85 pitches per start. And you're seeing it now. The health of the pitching staff has been huge. And so the numbers are there to show how much they really have been holding these guys back. But we've made a lot of jokes about Sonny Gray and how the heat gets to him and how the late season gets to him. And the Cardinals, to their credit, said, here's a way to get through this. Here's a way to work our bullpen or work our staff throughout an entire season so that it helps. And I don't care what you guys want, but all I've wanted from the Cardinals over the last few years is ingenuity and proactivity. And this is exactly what it's been. Here's the blurb from Bernie's piece from yesterday. And of course, Bernie Miklasz coming up here, joining us at 10:30. Cardinals third in the NL with a 3.69 FIP, fifth with 34 quality starts. The starters turn in more innings than we assume, ranking fourth in the NFL for most innings pitched and third in average innings per start. And they're only doing that with 85 pitches per start and still getting some of the most innings in the entire National League. That is wizard stuff from Ali Marmol. And it could turn out to be one of the most important factors of this team winning games in the dog days.
Yeah, and it was interesting because Tony La Russa was in the house the other night. He did both the radio and the TV broadcasts, but he had a long conversation with Ali beforehand. And I know one of the things that Ali wanted to talk to him about was the getaway days that Tony would put together, and people would go crazy over the lineups that Tony would have, especially if they were going for a sweep on a getaway day. And then inevitably they would win the game, and he'd say, in a time like this, this is like winning a doubleheader because we're going to win a game in August that we weren't supposed to win because our players are going to be so fresh. There is a lot to be said for taking more of a global view, for thinking big picture rather than going day to day and trotting the same lineup out there every day and using a 5-man rotation, which is something that used to happen with a great level of success even in the 80s. But times have changed now. There's a lot more science involved. And I'm of the belief that a lot of the information that the Cardinals have is a reason that they've been able to keep guys healthy.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. And that's the one thing. If we're talking about, we get a lot in the chats about, is the management doing well, so on and so forth. One of the things you got to look for is a team doing this, trying to find value and trying to find ways around just the realities of a season. And you might not agree with specifically what they do, but you got to be looking for people with a mind at work. That's like, there's so many things, not just in sports. I think about this in life. Look for people with a mind at work. Look for people with a plan, and then try. And if you don't agree with the plan, figure out their logic to the plan, and then judge the plan after that. Right now, based on the Cardinals, the logic is we're going to keep people below a certain number. And I'm sure in their pitching, in their video work and their bullpens and things like that, they're accentuating little things to make sure that you're getting the most out of your pitches and things like that. Location and how you attack batters so that you can get out of innings in 5 or 6 pitches instead of taking 9 or 10. Bottom line is they are executing. They have a plan. They're keeping low pitch counts, but they're getting the innings they need, and that was a big thing that they talked about last year. It's just an expertly executed decision right now by the Cardinals, and if it continues through this summer, again, it could be huge in the playoffs.
I'll be interested to see in the next 2 to 3 weeks if the Cardinals are still in the hunt, if they're even in the playoff hunt. At the moment, they are. Let me hear latest wild card standings: 4.5 out in the Central Division. In the National League wild card, the Cardinals trail by 1. So if the Cardinals are within 1 on July 15th, I wonder if they'll start to push the players a little bit harder. And obviously there are guys that are getting time off now, but I wonder if the Cardinals, especially with the pitchers, will try to extend them a little bit more.
What was that date again?
Middle of July 15th or so.
Is that are you picking that date because it's the second half, or is there a ramp up into
coming out of the All-Star break?
But I was going to ask, but is the ramp up to the deadline a part of that?
No, it's more you've preserved guys already. You have to preserve them for a reason, and I wonder where that reason comes. Is it August, September? Is it the middle of July on? At some point, and sometimes the team really struggles. When they had the 71-win season, they actually had a good May. And Ollie said when they went down the tubes in June, he said, well, we pushed the team really hard in May, and they just ran out of gas. At some point, you're conserving gasoline in the tank right now. And so when do you start using that gasoline that you are conserving? Is it on July 15th? Is it on August 1st? Is it August 15th? I don't know.
I think it's more August 1st or August 15th, because to me, you don't ramp it up until you make the deal that we've been talking about. The relief pitcher, the low end starter that can be used in a swing role. When you bring that guy in and you lengthen things, and then also once you know what you have, and injuries can affect this, but once you know what you have, you then can start building the plan to the roster extension in September. Mm-hmm. Because then that also lengthens things and gives you.
But you
more
only
options.
Get 2 extra players.
You only get 2 extra players, but if one of them, one of them is a pitcher, and all of a sudden I think we can see how much one pitcher can change how you work things. Is all I'm saying. Yeah, and I mean, especially when we're talking about the shift here is very small, which is pushing guys to go a little bit harder and throw a little bit harder, and maybe those 85 pitches are a little bit more on you. Well, now you need to maybe lean on more pitchers. I'm just saying, just having that one more pitcher in the bullpen, or just having that one more pitcher who's better from the deal, instead of having X pitcher from a trade instead of Matt Swanson, changes how comfortable you are with, like you said, ramping things up. And so that's why I think the ramp up discussion is more along the lines of August 1st or August 15th.
Yeah. Bill Downton, who is one of our favorites, he says, still say they need to sell, build for 28 and beyond. I think the only real guy to sell who doesn't have a no trade is Helsley. So you get to the deadline and you move Helsley. Sure. Yeah, but everything the Cardinals have now in the lineup, Arenado's going to be here. And they like his leadership, by the way. They like his leadership by example. You aren't selling Mason Wynn. You aren't selling Donovan. You aren't selling Contreras. He's not going anywhere. You aren't selling any of the outfielders. So, and nobody's going to take Miklasz off your hands. So basically, it's Helsley or Fedde. And I don't know that Fedde has an awful lot of market value. I don't know that there's a lot to be gained from moving Eric Fedde, aside from the fact that you open up the spot from McGreevy. But yes, to your point, this team needs to build for 26 and beyond, and that's what they're doing, and giving players runway, giving players opportunities to play on a regular basis. So yeah, I'm totally on board with that. As a matter of fact, if they just stand pat at the deadline, that wouldn't break my heart either. If we get to the deadline and the same scenario applies that we just talked about, they're a game or two out in the wild card, I'll say, yeah, sure. Let's stand pat and see what can happen with this group of guys.
I think 15-10 might be the latest that we've said the word runway on this show in the last 3 months. Like, I mean, we didn't say the word runway until 15-10, Randy. I think that might be the best we've ever done.
We're on a roll.
Yeah, you did break it though.
Yeah,
but it was good. It was good. I think we did a good job.
So yeah, runway is an important thing,
especially for this season.
It sure is. I'm gonna send you a little video here.
Jeez. By the way, I just need to point out That Pebble Beach polo that Randy's rocking right now, pretty sick.
Bought it at the Minneapolis airport.
That's a pretty sick Pebble Beach polo, my friend.
Yeah, that's. I was. I was stuck in a long layover at the Minneapolis airport one time, and so I went shopping and I found it, and I wasn't at Pebble Beach at all.
I was gonna say, why?
I was in Minnesota. It's a brand name. It's not the course.
Oh, it's not the course. It's
just a brand name. Isn't that terrible?
They got me.
Yeah. See, if we can put what I just sent you on the air, that'd be fun.
Oh gee. Oh yes. Okay.
Did you see that already?
Yes, I did see that. Yes. So
okay.
Let's see if I can get that up here. 1 second.
Let's see. Bill Down, we need to get an outfield bat. Well, and what they're trying to find out is what their outfield bats are. Now, I don't think that they believe they know whether or not Lars Nootbaar is what he was at the beginning of the season or what he is now. They like what they see right now of Alec Burleson. They still have not finished with Jordan Walker. Victor Scott II is going to be your center fielder for the long term. He's going to be the guy here. So, yes, well, it'd be great to be an outfield bat. I think the Cardinals are more likely, rather than to go out like signing an Ohtani or a Soto or something like that, I think the Cardinals are more likely to bring a guy up from their system, whether that be a Davis or whether that's moving Wetherholt to the outfield. I think that they're much more likely with their current MO to be bringing players through their system to the major league level rather than importing somebody from the outside, because they've tried the win now. They've tried it a lot, and it just hasn't worked to anybody's satisfaction. The goal is to obviously win the World Series, and that hasn't happened since 2011. And times have changed in terms of importing players, bringing in players from the outside, because not only are they extraordinarily expensive financially, but going and trading for a player now requires you to give up your best prospects. With the condensed minor leagues, everybody knows who everybody else's best prospects are, and you have to give up talent to get talent back. It's young talent for more seasoned talent.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's going to be tricky to make a deal. But if they keep winning, I think they're going to have to add it to the back end, because everything we're just talking about, they're going to have to ramp up this pitching staff at some point. And when that happens, something's going to crack, whether it be the ability to rely on the bullpen because you're then straining the bullpen, or one of these guys is going to get hurt. Something's going to crack, and you're going to have a plan B. Now, they have plan Bs, but their contingency plans lead to contingency plans. So, yeah, if one of these starters gets hurt, you just bring up Michael McGreevy. But now, he's not as long, he's not as experienced. So now it changes how you handle him as opposed to how you'd handle like an Eric Fetty as you ramp him up. Okay, so let's think about relievers. Our favorite trade deadline reliever pickup ever. Oh, it's Scrabble. It's obviously 2011.
But you
the
had
combination
Dotel there.
Yes.
You've had Mike DeJean, you've had Mike Timlin, you'd have Jonathan Broxton.
Because 11 there was 3. Was it 11?
Arthur Rhodes too?
Oh,
he wasn't in the trade. He was a pickup. He was a free agent
but
pickup.
But at the deadline they got Jackson, Zepchinski, and Dotel.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think it's got to be like the trio of the 2011 deadline: Zepchinski, Dotel, and Edwin Jackson.
See, I like guys, because those guys are guys we all remember. I like the more obscure pickups. The Mike DeJean pickup was one of my all-time favorites.
What year was that?
Like 05 maybe.
How'd that go for him?
No, not great.
Did he get shelled?
Yeah,
did he get shelled by the Astros in the playoffs?
I don't know if he even made the playoffs.
Oh wow. Okay, not a good move.
The Edward Mujica one, that was great. Was that Zach Cox?
Yeah, Edward Mujica was a good
to
move.
The Marlins for Edward Mujica maybe, and then he wound up saving 37 games for him.
You know what? Edward Mujica is a good one, and there's just something about the mid 2000s Cardinals. In fact, that's why I think I'm always trying to trade Ryan Helsley, because the mid 2000s Cardinals taught me to never trust a reliever.
Well, here's the thing, and you're not off here. And this is an old school, even before analytics, when it was called Sabre. Those you people always said that the most fungible position in baseball is the closer. And you're not wrong. Okay, I'll give you credit for that. If you look at the Giants' 3 world championships, the closer at the end of the year was always different than the closer at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
If you look at the Cardinals in 2006, Izzy at the beginning, Waino at the end. In 2011, it was Fernando Salas, I think, at the beginning, and obviously Jason Mott at the end. If you look at their 2013 team, it was Mujica at the beginning and Trevor Rosenthal at the end. Even good teams wind up with a different Yankees or the Dodgers last year. The Yankees too, Luke Weaver at the end. But the Dodgers winding up with Blake Trinan at the end of the season. It's amazing how often it happens that teams that wind up in the World Series have a different guy at the end of the season than they had at the beginning of the season.
I thought you were going to talk about the Yankees. When it wasn't a World Series year, but there was one year where they had a guy who threw 100 miles per hour at the beginning of the season and a guy who was a domestic violence abuser at the end of the season.
Oh, yeah, right.
Same guy, but
Same
nonetheless.
guy, yeah.
Rooster from Birmingham. At the beginning of the series, I would have been extremely happy with a split. However, the performance the last two games was a major letdown. This season is a roller coaster. I just want to flash back 2 days. Yes, the split's good, and I actually think that this is one of the cases where you should be taking a split and running with it because you got away with winning the first two games in a way that is not how you're going to win very many games.
With all the home runs.
With all the home runs against bad pitching. And then they shut you down with good pitching. While, yes, they also were shutting you down with good pitching against the worst potential lineup you currently have to go against lefty pitchers. Your right-handed bats have been decimated by injury, and that's a bad situation. So take the 2 wins that you won in a way that you will never really win other games. Take those 2 and run with them, and then look at the other 2 losses, realize you were not going to win them the way you were going to win the first 2 games, and then look at how just hampered the lineup was in those 2 games. And I think you should walk away pretty actually happy with this split.
Oh, yeah.
I think this is like,
I agree.
100% you should be happy with the split. I still think, no matter what happens. In fact, I honestly think even with what happened in the first 2 games, you should be even happier because you kind of stole those 2.
Yeah, right. I don't disagree with that. Kurt Martin, today's athlete is better trained, better fed, is bigger and stronger, but is less durable, more injury prone. But the way we train and recover needs to be looked at. Pitchers going max effort all the time is an issue. Players being tight, not drinking enough beer and eating enough hot dogs is an issue. Yes.
Here's the thing. Yes, you're right. Today's athletes are bigger and stronger. The problem is, and I know this isn't necessarily a baseball thing, but let's look at some other sports. The problem is in contact sports is the players are bigger and stronger. And while, yes, they are bigger and stronger, the human skeletal frame is still the human skeletal frame and has limitations that when you're getting in car crash level of collisions, things are going to happen. I know in baseball it's a little bit different, but to your point, when you are literally throwing a ball in a way that your body is not built to throw a ball. I think you can't overlook the fact that the human body is not built to throw a baseball the way that we throw baseballs. And so anytime you're putting the human body into that kind of torque, into your point, yes, they're better trained, but the fact of the matter is the torque on the UCL is now higher than it's ever been. And I don't think there's any way to grain feed a human being to have a stronger UCL. And so that torque will always hurt you. And that's why we see breakdowns.
Well, and another part of it is until 1974, we didn't even know a UCL existed.
That too.
We had no idea until Tommy John had Tommy John surgery. But it used to be that if a player had a bad arm, he just went away. They didn't fix him. They didn't have surgery. They didn't have knowledge. He had a dead arm, and he just moved on. There wasn't free agency. There wasn't a strong players union. So the player just moved on and went on and sold cars or changed tires or whatever. Well, now, with the knowledge of what a UCL is and the fact that surgery is out there and the fact that you can diagnose issues with a player's body, especially if you like that player's ability, all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, over the course of time, the evolution has brought us to this point where you can fix a player that might have previously just gone away. And that includes everybody that has Tommy John surgery. Oh, he's got a bad elbow. He comes back in spring training next year, doesn't throw hard, tries out with another team, doesn't work out, gets cut, career over. Now, Tommy John surgery, take off a year and come back throwing harder.
I also think Mason Windew's point, some of these kids are playing baseball, basketball, et cetera, 12 months a year from the age of 10. And to my point, I just think we're talking about things breaking down, because Ken Martin says there are a lot more non-contact injuries. And right now, Samuel Howell, no offseason rest is youth. I think that's also a case where a lot of the guys who are pros now are more so the guys who have been playing year round. Whereas 20 years ago, you'd get guys who would just play 3 sports and they'd have summers off. That doesn't exist anymore. So I think that's part of it. But also, I don't want to we can't jump to conclusions. Like everyone now just wants to tell me that this year, because of the rash of Achilles injuries, that there's a problem right now in the NBA. Like, or this is an anomaly because they're like, we literally 0 Achilles injuries last year, so 7 this year. Like, yeah, but there's been Achilles injuries before. Clearly, this is a high number, and if we see it for multiple years, we can start having a conversation. But we need to see the data, and I just don't know if there's been a huge amount compared to what it was like 10, 15 years ago.
I can tell you right now, they got rid of the load management. They're making the guys play a minimum of 65 games.
And by the way, while this is all happening, while we're having the conversation about the NBA, the NHL adding regular season games, not taking away preseason, but still potentially adding regular season games.
But I think they'll probably ultimately players will not have to play those 2 extra games either.
This and see, this is it's the shoes. Where are the high tops? Again, we need to use the best information, because RIP Kobe Bryant, one of the best things he did off the court for his legacy is that Kobe Bryant had a bunch of scientists for years break down the efficacy of high tops and how much high tops could help reduce ankle injuries. All of those studies that Kobe Bryant did with these scientists came down to a conclusion, which was high tops do nothing. They do squat to help with ankle stability, which is why, because if you look at soccer, where they have an incredible amount of sharp changing and they're running a lot, they're all wearing low tops. They're all wearing super low tops. And so that's why every Kobe shoe, after a point, Kobe came out and put all Kobe shoes were low tops, because he said, no, you actually get better ankle support from shoes designed specifically for ankle support with low tops than any of these high top shoes out there. So it's not the shoes. Now there's other technologies in shoes that could be hurting things, but the high top, low top thing is a myth, and I'm out here to debunk it.
It has been debunked. It was bunked, and now it's been debunked. All right, we're into the baseball season. You know what's going on now, and that's why you need to download the DraftKings Pick 6 app, where the crown is yours. And if you use that promo code right there, STL Sports, just $5 will get you $50 in bonus picks that allow you to keep the action going all week long. And now, with this all-new way to play daily fantasy sports, you can pick 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 actions, and you can make money off of it. For example, the Cincinnati Reds face Dylan Cease today. The Reds, especially Ellie De La Cruz, they strike out a lot. And the over-under for Dylan Cease is 6.5 strikeouts. I think he's going to have more than 6.5 strikeouts against Cincinnati. So I've got Cease and the Padres against the Reds, and I've got Cease to strike out more than 6.5. And then Jackson Holliday, who's been pretty hot lately, they put him in the leadoff spot, and he gets hot. He's taking on Tampa Bay. And because he's been hot, I've got Jackson Holliday to go over 1.5 combined hits, runs, and RBIs. So it's Cease over 6.5 strikeouts, Holliday over 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs. Bing, bang, boom. There is the fun that I have. I'm going to follow it all day, and it gives me a way to watch the game. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app today and use the code STL Sports when you sign up, only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Our buddy Bernie Miklasz, here, teammate on STL Sports Central, is right there. There he is. Bernard J., how you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. It's Friday, busy. Been enjoying listening to you two talk. You know,
Thank you.
Fun.
Appreciate that.
The show's so good. This show is so good. It really is.
Thank you. Bernie, as you know, I do another show on Matrix Midwest, do a TV show in the morning. And today was our 100th show. And our first guest on that show back in February, right before spring training started, was the Cardinals skipper, Ollie Marmol. And so I went to Ollie and I said, hey, I just want you to know what you think of us doing our 100th show. And I want to play this and let you hear this. Ollie, just effusive in his praise about the fight on Matrix Midwest.
Hold on a second. We lost the video. We had the video that we lost.
We had the video. We lost it. We'll get it.
This is the kind of stuff Ollie was worried about.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, here we go.
I'll let you know when it's in there, Bernie.
It's happening. How did everything go with Will Leach last night?
It was great. I mean, it was packed. Left bank book. Sorry, in the Central West End. It was a really hot night, but the place was packed. We had a great time. Will's so funny. He's so quick on his feet. He makes everyone laugh. Great self-deprecating humor. But as he was joking, we were there to talk about his new novel, which is incredible. And but he said, hey. He told the audience, but I know you're here to talk about Cardinals baseball, so we'll talk about Cardinals baseball. But no, by the way, his book, it's called Lloyd McNeil's Last Ride, and this thing is so good that he and his agent had 5 major Hollywood studios bidding on the film rights.
Wow!
And they actually sold it. I forget which studio. And Will had, he can't reveal names. Will had. Two, maybe 3, like major, like name brand actors calling him, lobbying to get the lead role.
That's fantastic.
I said to Will, I said, I think I can start hitting you up for loans or something. You're going to be a very wealthy guy, but he's amazing. He's a wonderful man and wonderful friend. And what a great talent he is.
And a long-running podcast with you and he over the years, right?
Yeah, we started it actually at 101 ESPN, and it was kind of like part of the 101 ESPN site, and that's where people would go. And then, I was told to leave, and then I also had a no-compete clause, so I couldn't work in the market. This tells you what the kind of guy Will Leach is. I said, my friend, I'm not going to be able to do this because it was a 101 ESPN property. We're not going to be able to do this. It's covered in the no compete contract. I said, so listen, and this is going to last a while, 6 months or so. So if you want to move on and find someone else to do the podcast, he said, no, absolutely not. I'll wait for you. I don't care how long it takes. Great guy.
Awesome.
Great guy.
That is terrific.
Bernie, one of the stats that we were talking about from you were throwing out just the Cardinals' efficacy from the starting pitchers, the ability to get deep into games and eat up the third most innings in the NL while only throwing those 85 pitches per start. And that was just a fascinating thing for me. And what I wanted to ask, because I know you did the research, was that 85 pitches a start, is that a pretty low number relative to the rest of the league? Or where's that falling, and how impressive is that overall?
It's below average. In other words, it's like fewer than the league average. And so what Ollie, and I heard you talking about that, and I appreciate it. Ollie and Dusty Blake have threaded the needle. And what I mean by threading the needle is that they're preserving their pitchers' health because they're not going nuts, they're not having all these 100+ inning starts. And yet, so by preserving their health and averaging 85 pitches per game, you would think it would mean you're not getting the bulk innings. But as you pointed out, I wrote, the Cardinals are in the top 5 in the majors. They're starting pitchers for innings pitched, and their average start is like top 3 or 4 in the majors in terms of 5.5 innings per start. So they're threading the needle because they're getting an economy of pitches thrown, but they're getting the bulk innings and average start length that puts them high up in the major league ranking. And see, one thing I don't think I did say, and I wanted to throw this out there, and Randy, I think you'll appreciate this. Listen, I think strikeouts are great, and I think it's wonderful if you have 3 guys in your rotation or in your bullpen for that matter, who can just blow people away. But I think the art of pitching has been lost to an extent because everyone's so obsessed with high velocity. And there's one thing about high velocity. It's not the arm, the elbow, the shoulder, not built to throw that fast. So those pitchers are going to break. When you have like a lot of the pitchers the Cardinals have where, their strikeout rate's not real impressive. In fact, it's not impressive at all, but they get a lot of ground balls. They get through innings pretty quickly. And there's another thing, it's a fancy pants stat, but it actually is simple. And I had this in the column too. There's a thing called location plus. It's an advanced metric, but location is just what it says. Can a pitcher hit his spots? That's all it means. Like if the catcher sets up at a certain, this is where I want the ball. Can he hit his spots? The Cardinals are the second best team in the majors. Their starting rotation's the second best team in the majors at hitting their spots. So they're very precise with their pitching. They also have starters a very low walk rate, and they limit home runs. So they're pitching. They're not throwing, they're pitching. And I really, really respect that. And one of the benefits of having pitchers rather than throwers is that the guys who pitch and they're not worried or they're not obsessed with velocity, they don't break down. They're going to stay healthier. So I think the Cardinals rotation this year is very underrated. And because everyone's looking at the strikeout rate, and it's like, no, look at the things they're doing well. And I have to hear one more clown tell me that Ollie and Dusty Blake, they have no idea what they're doing with pitching. It's like, my gosh, there are brain surgeons out there that can help you people. Do you actually watch the games? Anyway, I had to get nasty. Thank you.
Well, Bernie, you bring up Location Plus actually brings up a conversation that me and Randy had off the air because Eno Saris for The Athletic, who takes things from the analytical side, broke down all the rookie pitchers, and obviously the big names were the Chase Burns and the Mizorowski and those kind of guys. But Michael McGreevy, obviously because of his time with the Cardinals this year, was also got a mention in there. And Saris pointed out that he has if he qualified, he doesn't yet qualify, but if he did qualify, his 123 Location Plus would be one of the highest, if not the highest, I think, in Major League Baseball. But then he also couched it by saying his Stuff Plus, which is what is about the actual the power of your pitches, the movement of your breaking ball, those kind of things. He has a very low number there to a point where he would have to only fit a couple historical comparisons to be an effective pitcher. But you bring up Location Plus, I now need to bring that up about McGreevy and just dive into more of your point about the Cardinals' ability and their pitchers' ability to win on the margins, and also why it makes sense for a team to still want to roll with a guy who is maybe the best location pitcher in the game, even though he doesn't have the stuff.
The Cardinals fans that have been around for a while, if they appreciated Jeff Suppan, right, they should appreciate this starting rotation. Because, listen, Sonny Gray's got more strikeout punch than just Suppan. Lubador does too. But the point being is that, the Cardinals did have a dominant starter in Chris Carpenter and later Adam Wainwright. Don't get me wrong. But Jeff Suppan, they don't win the World Series in 2006 without him. And he's a guy that didn't throw hard. He's a guy that didn't get a lot of strikeouts. What he did, location. He would make pitches. He would make pitches in spots where it's tough for hitters to do what they want to do with the pitch. And, I appreciate a guy like Jeff Suppan. I'm not saying I'm not a get off my lawn type about I don't need these damn strikeouts. And I'm not like that. But I just think there's room for both in Major League Baseball. If you have failed to cultivate starting pitchers, especially who can strike a lot of people out, well, you don't throw up your hands and give up. There's still a way to have a successful starting rotation, even if it's not flashy. And that's what the Cardinals, at least through the first half of the season, have for themselves in 2025. It's not an opinion, it's a fact. It's backed fully by a rather large set of stats that tell you this is a really good and underrated rotation.
There's a great old baseball line, and Mike Rizzo, the GM of the Nationals, brought it back. I don't care how hard you throw ball 4. And right. And that's basically what we're talking about. And I remember asking Mike Schilt about two different guys, both Carlos Martinez and Jordan Hicks. And I said, why don't you ask those guys to dial it back maybe a couple miles an hour, because both of them were in love with throwing 99 in the case of Martinez and 100 in the case of Hicks. And why don't you ask those guys to dial it back for a little bit more command? It just makes sense. And he said, you're 100% right. He said, but why are those guys here? How did those guys get to the major leagues? He said, I can't go to those guys who are in the major leagues because they throw hard and say, don't throw as hard so that you can have a little bit more command. The players just don't react well to those requests.
No, and it's unfortunate because you can still throw hard and you might even be better because of it. Because it's not all one. Yeah. You're not as predictable. If you have a fastball and you take something off of it, you take 4 miles up an hour off of it from time to time, they're expecting that thing to be coming in at 100. And all of a sudden it comes in at 95, which is plenty fast, but it looks like a changeup because they're looking for 100 mile an hour. And it sort of takes them off their timing. So yeah, there is a balance, and I wish I wish the Cardinals had more strikeout punch. I do, because they're also, they're dependent on, batted ball luck. But you look at where they are. They're fielding independent ERA in the National League. Their starting rotation, it's 3.71. And somebody might ask, and I understand, well, why would you use fielding independent ERA? Not because I'm trying to be the smartest guy in the room, but because fielding independent ERA is based on what pitchers can control, right? It takes like the batted ball luck out of it. And the reason why the Cardinals rank 4th in the National League fielding independent ERA is because their walk rate, their starters, their walk rate is the lowest in the league, and their home run rate is the 3rd lowest in the league, which means the things they can control, they're not walking people. They're not giving up home runs. They're hitting their spots. Their location is excellent. That's one of the reasons why the home runs against them is so low. They're not giving pitchers those meatballs, or hitters those meatballs, and hitters get frustrated with them. They throw off their timing. So when you have a pitching staff that can do that, they're not going to walk you. They're not going to serve up meatballs. They're going to let their defense go to work. That's a way to have an effective pitching staff. It may not be ideal. Cardinal starters have the 3rd highest ground ball rate in the National League too. I mean, if you have this kind of staff, I give all the credit in the world to the people that manage and handle the pitching. Because if you have this kind of staff, this is your roster, this is all you have. You have to sculpt it. You got to find out how to make it as good as you can make it based on what their limitations are. And so I say bravo to the job that Marmol and Dusty have done, finding a way to circumvent the lack of strikeout power, circumvent it in a way that makes them really, really effective.
Bernie, one of our great chatters on YouTube, Bill Downton, loved what you talked about with Jordan Walker yesterday. For those that haven't had a chance to see that yet, can you capsulize your Jordan Walker discussion?
Hey, I'm a Jordan Walker guy, and I'm very, very patient. But I'm not. I think I'm reading some of the handwriting here a little bit. I think he's about to run out of runway because he just can't get synced. And, Burleson plays right field, a lot better than people thought he would. And I'm not just saying that just because of the spectacular catches, although they were nice. But I had a note the other day before the spectacular catches saying, hey, his defense is now slightly above average in the outfield, which is pretty amazing. So you can't take Burleson out of the lineup. You just can't. He deserves to play every day because now he hits left-handed pitchers pretty well. You got to stay with Nootbaar in the other corner because Nootbaar, I heard you guys talking, and he's very frustrating at times, but he's very inconsistent. But when Nootbaar hits a home run in a game this year, they're 11-0. When he drives in a run in a game, they're 19-4. And when he gets on base twice in a game, which is kind of the main thing he does, what is their record? It's ridiculous is what their record is. I can't find it right now, but they're like way over 500. So Nootbaar is essential to this offense because if he's going well, he makes a huge difference. So you can't bury him. He's got to play. So where's Jordan Walker going to play? Listen, you say, well, Herrera's on the IL, so he can be a DH. What, really? Okay. So you want to take basically your worst hitter, your worst regular season hitter this year, and you're going to put him in the DH spot and tell Gorman to sit on the bench against right-handed pitchers, right? No, of course not. It's just not going to happen. So, at some point, Jordan Walker just has to get better. I mean, this is his 3rd year, and he's gotten worse instead of better. He's having career low numbers in virtually every category, and the other thing too is he's not even realistically usable in terms of a platoon split situation because he hits right-handed pitchers better than left-handed pitchers. And the thing of it is, it's not like he hits right-handed pitchers well, but since the end, he hit lefties pretty well, kind of well early in the season. But since since late April, he's 4 for 34 against left-handed pitchers, and he's got a 44% strikeout rate. So how is that a platoon guy? It's not. And his defense.
My question would be: will the Cardinals have the gumption to trade a 23-year-old who has just over 2,000 professional at bats?
Right.
Jordan Walker has 700. He had about 700 minor league at bats before he made it to the major leagues. Aaron Judge had 1,500 before he made it to the major leagues. Never even played in the majors until he was 25. So, do the Cardinals have the gumption to move on from that guy who everybody universally thought was a can't-miss prospect?
Well, it's an option, but I'm not in favor of that, and certainly not this year. And I also want Chaim Bloom to be in charge to make those decisions. But one thing they can do, when I say he's running out of runway, and I didn't, explain that properly, and I apologize. I'm talking about runway for this year, because if this team is in the hunt, if this team has to, really has a legit shot to make the playoffs, okay? If they get there, you have to put more of a priority in putting your best lineup on the field every day to win. You have to make it sounds stupid to say you have to put an extra emphasis on winning, because that should be the emphasis. But they're the ones who set this up as a runway season. So at some point, it's got to be more about winning than and less about the runway. And Walker, more than any player, I think Walker is the guy that would affect. But that's just for this year. That's just for this year. I'm not saying pull the plug, he's done, get rid of him. I'm not saying that at all. I mean, now I don't know how Chaim Bloom sees him, and I don't know what, that's the thing. Chaim Bloom's the wild card factor in all this. I could see him putting together a deal that's got multiple players. Maybe Walker is in it. I don't know. I can't make any predictions on that. But just so you know, I'm not saying pull the plug, he's done. Not at all. But I am saying he might be phased out as a regular presence. I would say relatively soon. I'd say, if you get to the All-Star break and you're in contention, I don't think you can go down that path and play him every day, because he's too much of a liability, and his defense has relapsed as well. And I sound so negative. I really want him to thrive. But you gotta be truthful about what he's been doing. And it's really kind of sad, because he's just lost his confidence.
Well, and it's a Rubik's Cube, and it has been all season for Ollie.
Yeah.
In terms of trying to find enough, we have this word runway for everybody, but the only time that Walker has really truly had consistent ability to play at the major league level until this injury got hurt was down the stretch in 2023, his rookie year, when he was at his best. And everybody thought, okay, he's on the runway. Then he hits 155 for a month, and they send him down last year. And I don't know if he can stay healthy enough. I don't know if he can be good enough for a stretch, but that was one thing the Cardinals were counting on this year. Then he has the wrist and the appendicitis, and they lose that ability, especially because they're in the race, as you said, to find out more about him.
And the sad thing, for like the final 10 games or so before he went into the IL with the wrist, he was tearing it up. And see, the best thing he can do is like he has a good stretch, and he starts building confidence, and he starts building momentum, and he feels really good about where he is. And then things sort of take off. Then the wrist injury kind of just halted his momentum and interrupted the progress. And then he came back, and he was really bad before he got appendicitis. He was 3 for 18 with 6 strikeouts. So sustainability has been a real challenge for him. And Randy, and Rock, I also think the Cardinals didn't do him any favors, because if you look at his rookie season, I mean, the numbers overall were really, really good for a 21-year-old who just was coming up from AA, skipping AAA. So he opens his career with a 12-game hitting streak, and everyone's going nuts. St. Louis loved him. Cardinals fans were going crazy. It was such a big deal. And then, granted, he cooled off a little bit because he started hitting a lot of ground balls. But the thing about him, he hits a ball so hard, he can power ground balls through the infield. But that's not ideal, but he can at least get something out of it. But because he was hitting ground balls, they panicked. And so they send him. He plays a game in Seattle on April the 24th, and then they send him down less than a month into his rookie season after he'd had a 12-game hitting streak. And even at the time they sent him down, he was hitting 276, and he had a solid OPS. and they send him down. And I looked at this the other day. The 3 games that he played before they sent him down, right? He was 4 for 10. He was 4 for 10. Now, if you're Jordan Walker, you're like, well, wait a minute. They pulled me up over AAA. They let me skip a whole level. I have a 12-game hitting streak. I'm hitting 276. My OPS is over 700. And in my last 3 games, I went 4 for 10. And it's like, what? I'm going to Memphis. And they also, and so that messed with his head and it messed with his confidence and it probably demoralized him. And the other thing is one of the worst things I've seen the Cardinals do, which is throw this kid, which he was, just throw him in a right field without any preparation.
Yeah.
And he was not ready to play right field. And I felt so bad for him because you could tell he was embarrassed. You could tell that he felt terrible. And so you have a guy that has shown he can hit in the major leagues, right? And you mess up his head by demoting him when he probably didn't, when he didn't deserve it. And you're also messing up his head because he was like the worst right fielder in the game. And you can't just say, well, you can block all that out and you get focused on your hitting. That's a tough ask, man. He was so down on himself because of the fielding issues. What in the hell were they thinking?
Well, Bernie, that's exacerbated by this. When they got Arenado in 2021, he obviously had the opt-outs. But they already had Nolan Gorman. He was a first-round draft choice before Walker was. They knew, I knew, you knew, everybody knew that if Nolan Arenado opted out, that Nolan Gorman was going to play third. And the Cardinals were saying, well, we don't want to move Jordan Walker to the outfield. We're going to keep him at third base because we're worried about how his defense, switching his defensive positions, will affect his offense. Well, that's the kind of thing you handle at the minor league level.
That's
then
right.
They do that exact same thing at the major league level a couple of years later when they knew that he was never going to play third for them at the major league level.
Yeah, Walker was on a fast track to the majors. And so when you're thinking about this smartly, in his final year of minor league ball, which is 2022, you got to go at least when you get to the All-Star break. I actually think sooner, maybe after the first 2 months, you say, I think we got to get him some time in right field, and he's going to have to. We'll have some time to teach him, and he can learn. At least when he goes to the major leagues, we put him right field, he'll have a lot of experience. They didn't do that, and oh, by the way, they never had a full-time outfield instructor.
Right.
He's down there without a specialized coach who could help him.
Yeah.
They did this kid a tremendous disservice.
Yeah, July 31st of 22. It was the day they traded Harrison Bader away, and they got the pitchers. And I asked Mo right after his press conference, and I said, "So Walker to the outfield?" And he said, "Yep, tonight." So he'd never played a game in the outfield in his life, didn't have an outfield instructor, and that night that Harrison Bader got traded was the night they moved Jordan Walker to the outfield.
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah,
there's no chance though that's gonna happen with JJ Wetherholt, right? Or the guys that they have to move to left field because
they've got Bernard Gilkey now roving around and doing some outfield instruction.
See, I don't know why Wetherholt. I'm probably overthinking it, but I don't know why they don't at least let Wetherholt run around in the outfield a little bit. He can field, like he knows what he's doing at second base. He knows what he's doing at shortstop. He can play third base. They already know that he can do that and that he's not going to lose that. Why wouldn't you have him out there, especially center field? He can run, right? There's a lot of things he can do. Why not at least give him some time out there? So if you reevaluate where you want to put him, because you have this glut of middle infielders, he's a guy that could, especially if Walker flops and Victor Scott doesn't get any better offense, at least you would have maybe another option offensively. I'm not saying you make him an outfielder. I'm just saying, give him some time out there, because the more positions he can play, the easier it will be to fit him in your everyday lineup. That's all I'm saying. And this kid's going to be great. He's going to be Bryce Harper.
Burleson and Donovan, hadn't it?
Yeah. So Wetherholt is he's got that Bryce Harper persona, which is a good thing. Yeah, he's as confident as could be. Like if this guy goes 1 for 11 in the big leagues, he doesn't care. Let's go.
Lucky he's here now rather than a couple of years ago.
I know.
He might
I
not,
know.
but they might care.
Then one thing, hey, let me ask you guys a question. I don't want to overstay my welcome here, but I was thinking about this, and this is not a novel thought. And this is no disrespect intended to current Cardinals players, because we appreciate the heck out of Donovan and Wynn and Burleson and some others, But Randy, I don't have to tell you this, man. The Cardinals of under Bill DeWitt, but even before that, but Bill DeWitt brought stars back to the Cardinals. Like he's told me a bunch of times. Say, look, I think the Cardinals historically have always had stars, big stars. We always want to have big stars, which is why they went out and I'm not saying DeWitt made the trade. That's why they went out and got Mark McGwire. That's why they went out and got Edmonds. He wants stars, and he let Walchakity handle it. We got to have star power. That's why they made the trades, and Bill had a lot to do with making the trades for Goldschmidt and Arenado. We need stars. We need stars. I love that attitude, but where are the stars? And this is no disrespect to Arenado, but he's in the descent of his career, and he's not the offensive player that he was. Although I love watching this guy play defense. He's a star, but not. He's not a guy that people say, well, he's a top 20 player in the major leagues or whatever. Where are the stars going to come from? That's
a great question, because I think the stars, the guys that are going to be Hall of Famers, the people like Shohei Ohtani, the Cardinals aren't going 700 million. Juan Soto, the Cardinals aren't going 765 million. Vladimir Guerrero stayed with his own team for 500 million. From the outside, I think that ship has sailed in terms of the way the Cardinals used to get those guys. You've got to develop those guys within your system. You need, and that's one of the reasons that the Cardinals needed Jordan Walker to turn into a star, because they don't have the economic oomph to compete with the Dodgers or the Mets or the Yankees to go out and get a guy like that. A guy who has a chance to be a Hall of Famer, Kyle Tucker, going to be a free agent this year. He's going to be a $500 million player, Bernie. The Cardinals aren't going to be swimming those waters. And you're right. I think, has it been since 1909, I think, since the Cardinals have had a year where they didn't have at least one Hall of Famer in uniform. And yeah, they're in danger once Arenado is out of here of not having a guy.
And one of the unfortunate parts about their downturn is that, St. Louis is no longer like a top destination location for free agents or guys who have a no trade veto and would say, oh yeah, I'll go to St. Louis, because the Cardinals were always in the hunt. They're always on the October stage. It's all that history. But players now, the Cardinals they're off the grid right now. I mean, compared to what they were, where they used to be. They're not as prestigious right now, not as prominent. They have a chance to change that by getting back in the playoffs regularly, because players want money first. They also, I think, choosing where you want to live and play is maybe moved up. I think that's a much more of a priority now for free agents. It isn't just the money, but it's also, do I want to get a house in Malibu and play for the Dodgers? Do I want to, all those great golf courses in San Diego? Do I want to be there? New York, think about all the endorsements. It's it's the biggest city in the world, and all, the biggest stage of it all, and it's like the Cubs can sell to you on Wrigley Field and a lot of other things. But the Cardinals have sort of dropped down in the list of like the most attractive places. And it's nothing to do with the fans. Nothing. It's just when you go from being one of the best in baseball for 20 years, just about every year, and then all of a sudden you're somewhat irrelevant or kind of irrelevant, or you are irrelevant in terms of the national stage, you lose your prestige, right?
And I think a couple of things happened. Number one, in 2011, I think it was a big deal when Albert said no hometown discount, because all of those guys gave the hometown discount. And then he says, no, I'm not giving them a hometown discount. I think that had an effect. And then when it didn't work, when they got Goldie and Arenado, because if you would have asked somebody in 2017 or 2016, okay, Goldschmidt and Arenado are going to be the corners for a team in 2020, 2021, 22. Goldie and Arenado, they're going to be the corners. What team do you think it's going to be? And everybody would have said, oh, Yankees, Dodgers, they would have said big market teams. Nobody would have said the Cardinals. I think when those two desired to come here And Arenado forced his way to St. Louis, and then they didn't win. I think that made St. Louis a less desirable place.
That's exactly right. And it's a shame. And I think maybe talk within the industry. Some of the players are, probably put the word out. Listen, they keep changing managers. We don't have the technology or the advantages in terms of everything that the absolutely modernized. It's not a place where they're up to speed on analytics and things that can really truly help us make us better. Like you look at the Dodgers, you talk to David Freese next time you have him on or whatever. You talk to David Freese about the Dodgers. You talk about Tommy Edman about the Dodgers. You talk about Albert Pujols, the Dodgers. Those guys just absolutely blown away by what the Dodgers did for them. The Dodgers revived Pujols' career as a hitter because they're so smart with the analytics, and he bought into it. And Brant Brown was his hitting coach at the time, who worked with him. And all of a sudden, Albert Pujols is outstanding again. It's because the Dodgers know how to get the best out of players. Look at Max Muncy. Look at Justin Turner when he was there. Look at Kike Hernandez. I mean, I could go on and on and on.
Yeah, Chris Taylor, Tommy Edman.
Yeah, Tommy Edman. And David Freese was kind of done in Pittsburgh. He goes there, and he was a great player for them. They know how to get the best out of players. And if you look at the Cardinals, frankly, they don't know how to do that. They lost their way with that. And part of it is through neglect. Player development, also, technology, tools, facilities. They just let it all drop, and you can't do that because it's highly competitive now as far as, well, here's what we can do for you as a player. Here's how we can make you better. The Dodgers have that pitch to everybody they talk to, and the players talk amongst themselves. And so players will call up these Dodgers guys on the team or in the past, say, well, what did the Dodgers do for you? And then they'll get unbelievable what they did for me. These guys will find a way to make you better.
Bernie, I was talking, and I know Rock has something here. But I was talking to a Cardinal executive last year about a Cardinal player that has or had a personal coach, and that didn't thrill the team. But the guy said, "Well, I don't really get what I need here." And I was told that the Dodgers have 55 to 65 different people where if a player wants to go to a personal coach, they say, "Well, what are you trying to get? What does he give you that you feel like it makes you better?" And the player goes down the list. Well, X, Y, and Z. And the Dodgers say, "Oh, we got that guy right here. And you know what? You don't have to pay for your food. He's in our building. We can take care of you. And you don't even have to pay for him. We've got that coach for you right here." It is remarkable what they're able to do. And by the way, if you want people to be taught the way that you want them taught, you get them taught by your own guys rather than somebody on the outside.
That's right. So I'm so glad Chaim Bloom's here with Rob Cerfolio and Larry Day and everybody else, because they are absolutely going to restore what the Cardinals once had as far as smart draft development, giving their youngest prospects with talent, or all their prospects, every possible tool and advantage to become what they can become. And the Cardinals got away from that terribly. And to me, that was the biggest disappointment. See, I disagree with a lot of people just point, payroll. To me, the most disappointing thing about the decline of the Cardinals had nothing to do with payroll. It had everything to do with dropping the ball big time on what was their traditional strength for many years.
Yeah.
Being ahead of the curve as far as developing players, especially starting pitchers. And they just let that rot, and so that's why I always laugh at the people that just make it all about the payroll. The Cardinals had some really good payrolls, since 2019, then what did they do with it? I mean, the Cardinals have had really good payrolls in years where they haven't done much. It's more about evaluating talent and developing the talent and coaching up the talent. That's far more important than, the size of some guy's contract, because we all know the Cardinals have had some terrible contracts. Well, they had to pay Seattle to take Mike Leake off their hands. They had to give Seattle a bunch of money. They paid Dexter Fowler's salary his final year. It was like $20 million. And they gave really bad extensions. Michaelis, Matt Carpenter. There are others. All those relievers that they spent a fortune on, right? Mm-hmm. And yet, like I'm doing the show on Calf Finesse, and we're getting text messages all the time, and everything is about how cheap they are. My answer to that always was, and it is still now, I say, wait a minute, whoa. Are you drinking? And like, what are you talking about? Are you drinking today? Well, what are you talking about? Why would you want John Mozeliak to spend more money?
Mm-hmm. Bingo. Right.
Why would you want him throwing money away?
Yeah. Yeah. And then trying to defend the inefficiency too. That was
right.
When the catchphrase and the thing that you're trying to avoid in baseball is inefficiency, and you're clearly inefficient with your expenditures. I think we can look at what the Cardinals got out of the expenditures. That was the bottom line. I'm with you. Yeah. That was a big thing.
And they stopped spending money on their player development system.
Yeah, totally.
Which was their cathedral. It was their shrine. It was like the thing that was the Cardinal way. And they just like basically destroyed their own heritage. And it's like, see, that's what drives me crazy about the criticism of the way they've run the team. People overlook the stuff that was really, really, really important that the Cardinals let slip when there's no excuse for letting it slip. But they did.
And I was saying yesterday, if you let the farm system slip, and it takes the longest to rebuild because you let the farm system slip up and it craters. That's a 3 to 5 year to maybe even longer than that ability to finally get back to its roots. You let something at the major league level, like just a positional spot, just like slip into a bad thing. You can fix that in free agency in 1 or 2 years. And so that makes it even worse. And one thing we got a couple chats about today, Bernie, was Ivan Herrera, and you honed in on one of the only negatives you could have about Ivan Herrera, which is this is now the third time in the last 2 years that he's gotten time taken away because of an injury. So a lot of the injury conversations have happened across multiple teams in St. Louis. Just I guess kind of extrapolate on your thoughts about the worry around Ivan Herrera as he's sitting on the IL again.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons why I wholly endorsed the idea of just making him the DH, because I thought he would get beat up behind the plate, and he would if he played a lot. He would really have more injuries, but he's getting hurt just as a DH. And I don't know whether he needs to be in a flexibility program. He probably does, but I thought playing DH would protect him and lower the injury risk, but it hasn't. But yet I hear people saying, oh, when he comes back, he's got to be their full-time catcher. Really? Is that right? Okay. We'll see how long that lasts. And, you think also the thing about Pedro Pages, take a look at, take a look at the pitching staff's ERA when he's the catcher, and also runs allowed per game when he's the catcher. The difference between him and Herrera is stunning. It's like he clearly makes a difference because the players love the way he calls pitches, and you need a pitching staff that's really got a great guy behind the plate, because we talked about it. They're not going to strike people out. They got to be really smart in their approach. This guy makes a huge difference behind the plate. He makes his pitchers better. He guides them through games. He's got some Molina type qualities. I'm not saying he's Molina, but the things we revered about Yadier Molina, he's got some of those attributes because the pitchers love him and they want to work with him because he makes them better. And so once again, I'm astonished that people already have forgotten, in effect, what a great defensive catcher who handles pitchers at a high level very well. Like it's as if the 2004 through 2022 is like gone from the memory.
Yeah.
Remember, Randy, when the best fans of baseball were screaming for La Russa to bench Molina when he was young?
In 218, yeah. And Tony said you don't have to get a single hit. You don't have to get a hit. You just catch and we'll be fine. Yeah.
There is tremendous value in a terrific defensive catcher. Plus, he throws people out too. But he's Pedro Pages is actually tied. Well, he's either tied for first or he's second on the team in defensive runs saved, and his catcher ERA is about 350. Herrera, it's like 560. Right. Oh, but let's put him behind the plate.
And I know Matthew Liberatore was young when he was throwing to Molina, but Matthew Liberatore will tell you now, hey, Pajes is the best guy I've ever thrown to, So that says a lot. And by the way, I asked Ollie last week if they had thought about the idea of giving Herrera an outfield glove, and he said, we're not there yet. He said, we want to exhaust all options with him before we make that request, which tells me that I think Herrera probably still wants to catch and they want to pacify him a little bit. But I wouldn't be surprised, Bernie, if we get to the offseason and the Cardinals suggest to him that he go down to Florida and work on being an outfielder.
Yeah, all you got to do, you got to look at coming attractions. I mean, Jimmy Crooks is a major league catcher. Leonardo Bernal might be an outstanding major league catcher because now he's hitting for booming power and he's outstanding defensively. And they've got that Reniel Rodriguez, who's a guy who, is an 18 or 19-year-old kid with prodigious power. So they have all these catchers in the pipeline getting closer to St. Louis, which is even another reason why you have to find another spot for Ivan Herrera. I mean, this is pretty simple stuff, right?
No doubt. And he's athletic enough. He could go out there and play left field as well as Manny Ramirez or Lonnie Smith or even Matt Holliday. He could play left field as well as Matt Holliday did.
Yeah, that's the place really where you do kind of stick your least capable defender. And most of those guys have pride, so they'll try to be as good as they can be out there. Holliday was like that. But but this idea, I always flabbergasted when people are just like the fact that the left fielder is kind of awkward or is not graceful. He's there for a reason. His bat, they didn't have a DH.
The question you ask, I mean, hell, Greg Luzinski played for a world champion in left field. That's the question you ask yourself. Could I win a World Series with that guy in left? And I think with Herrera, his athleticism, I think you could do it.
One thing I think it's fascinating. We need to get Bernie. We need to get you to do a special interview with Jonathan LaCroix, because I don't know if you know this, but he has been one of the biggest Yachty propagandists on Twitter over the last 2 or 3 months. Every time I see a Jonathan LaCroix tweet, it's him retweeting somebody or talking about how much respect he has for Yadier Molina. His latest one was 2 days ago. Somebody put out a question with a graphic with all his stats and said, is Yadier Molina a first ballot Hall of Famer? Jonathan LaCroix, yes, he's a winner and legendary catcher. This is not debatable. You guys, I think a conversation with him about Yachty, I think would really shut down anybody who has any doubts about what a professional catcher can see and respect about Yachty's game.
Molina, who worked harder than anybody because he put in the mental work. And I had a great interview with him one time where, I said, listen, I hear that you go home and you stay up half the night and you're doing stuff to get ready for the next game or the next series. And he didn't say this to be bragging. He said it because I really wanted to know, and he respected that I wanted to know. And he said, yeah, I go home. He said, I pop a beer. I ice down, I get into bed with my tablet and I stay up till about 3:30 in the morning, scouting hitters.
Wow.
And I say, so you're in bed, like you caught 9 innings on a night where it's 100 degrees in St. Louis. And you probably caught a couple foul balls somewhere, but you don't leave the ballpark and go home and just crash. You take your homework to bed and stay up half the night. Right.
Unbelievable.
Amazing. I mean, it's just amazing. The people that disparage him will point to his offense. And again, they're just utterly clueless. Take a look at the Cardinals ERA in his years as the starting catcher. Take a look at all the guys who got a lot better once they started working with him. He was a huge, huge difference maker for those Cardinals teams because it was like having a genius behind the plate, and the pitchers knew he was a genius. And the other thing is opposing hitters were paranoid because they thought they're seeing if he's looking, he would know how to rattle hitters too and get in their heads.
Yeah.
It's like Shelby Miller gave me that great quote when he was Cardinals. He said, this guy's unbelievable. He said, I see him looking up at a hitter. If you notice, he said he always looks up at the hitter's eyes, right? And this is before the hitter's setting up and all that stuff. This isn't like he's not trying to cheat. He just looks at him and he glances up and then he glances up again. And Shelby Miller said, man, he says, it's like that dude can see into their soul. and it freaks him out. He said he can actually look into their soul, and they're like, "What is he doing? Why does he keep looking at me?" You know.
That's awesome.
But
That's
but let's talk about putting catchers ahead of him who weren't catchers for much of their career. Right?
Yeah. There's a lot of that out there.
No doubt. Joe Sheehan had a stat on Molina, and this is nothing against Buster Posey and Joe Mauer, but Molina said in his catching career he had more games as a catcher and caught more innings as a catcher than both of those guys combined.
Wow, that's incredible.
And yet you got morons out there saying, "Well, they were better hitters." Look, what that tells me is you have no freaking idea about baseball and the impact that a great defensive catcher has on his team, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why do you embarrass yourself? Just be quiet about it. If you don't like Molina, fine. But don't make up garbage to justify a stupid opinion, okay? Right? He was a catcher. Posey was a catcher until he decided to play first base. Mauer was a catcher before he decided pretty early. Not for me. I'm going to play first base. Right?
Right. Yeah. And by the way, all the other players, it's mostly media people that have the affinity for taking shots at Yadi. Pretty much every single player that I've ever talked to says, he's the best. He's a Hall of Famer.
He's revered by other catchers. He's really revered. And that should tell you everything you would like to Rock's point about Jonathan Lucroy. The fact that a guy like Lucroy, who was really good defensively in his own right, but so many other catchers, Yadier Molina is their idol. And he's still an idol for all the young catchers out there. You know,
including a guy like Salvador Perez, is who just gives him all the credit in the world.
Right. So I don't like, dumb people are okay, but when they try to act like they're smart is when I have a problem with it.
So, Bernie, we tried to play Ollie for you, talking about the 100th show on TV that Andrew Rogers and I did this morning, and we asked him about it and what he thought, based upon the fact that he was the first guest. Here's Ollie. We think
it should be not going on there.
It's not going on. We'll put it up on the social media.
Listen, Yadier Molina would know how to get that.
He would fix it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just okay.
It's there, but it just doesn't want to load for some reason. My apologies. Yeah,
that's okay. Anyway, he gave me some trouble. Ollie is fun, and I think everybody. His personality is coming out, and he loves to jab and poke and have fun.
He's going to finish his fourth season with a higher winning percentage than Tony La Russa after his first four seasons in St. Louis.
That's pretty good.
He is.
Yeah.
So
pretty good.
But
you have a great weekend, sir. Cardinals in Cleveland, a lot going on, and you just take care of yourself, and we'll talk to you soon.
You got my energy up, fellas. I love visiting with you every Friday. Thank you.
Love you, Bernie. Take care. See you later.
Love you, bud. See ya.
There we go.
That's our buddy Bernie Miklasz
on
STL Sports Center.
I like that we can send him into the weekend with a little bit of energy, a little bit of fervor. Yeah. By the way, I always want to throw out, every time we talk about Molina, I have to go to my favorite stat that really just shows his dominance. From 2005 to 2022, the average baseball team in Major League Baseball had 2,146 attempts against them for stolen bases. The Cardinals had 1,370 stolen base attempts against them.
Amazing.
That is absolutely insane. And if you want to, I don't know if this is a better stat, but I'll give it to you anyway. So the Cardinals 1,370 in that same time frame. The closest team 1,883, 500 more. It is an insane amount when we're talking about a number under 2,000. That is a ridiculous difference. Yadier Molina, the absolute GOAT.
Hey, if you're looking for a great place for lunch today or during the weekend, I want you to stop by Fenton Barn Grill on Rudder Road in Fenton. Talk about tantalizing. How about the trash wings at the Fenton Barn Grill? They are absolutely delicious. They're the best trash wings you'll ever have. And you see, it's right now the trash wings being applied with that delectable signature golden sauce at the Fenton Barn Grill, and you're absolutely going to adore what you have with those wings. But it's not just that. It's the salads at this time of year when it's so warm in St. Louis. They have fabulous salads, and you can get fresh lettuce, seasoned turkey, and that Cobb salad that is so good. Make sure that you try one of the salads over at the Fenton Bar and Grill, and when you stop by, tell them Randy sent you, and they're really going to take care of you. They've got great people there. Megan is working. You'll say hi to Jamie. You'll say hi to the entire crowd there. The chef salad, as I mentioned, with the ham and the tantalizing smoked turkey, red onions, fresh tomato, shredded cheddar cheese, and croutons. It is sensational. Of course, their chef dressing is some of the best that you'll ever have. They have $2 beers, domestic beers right now, and you can take advantage of some of the great appetizers. As a matter of fact, when you go to happy hour at the Fenton Bar and Grill, 6 items for $6 each, mini tacos, the Fenton Bar and Grill fried dill pickles, breaded spicy cheese curds, pretzel bites, fried green beans, and more. Say hi to the 2024 maitre d' of the year. His name is Chuck, and he is at the Fenton Bar and Grill. He'll be there all weekend. If you want the best meal you'll have, and it's convenient and it's fun, you can watch the game there tonight. Stop by the Fenton Bar and Grill, and when you go, tell him Randy sent you. All right, the NHL draft is tonight. We've got that coming up. Looking forward to that. And our buddy Jeremy Rutherford says at The Athletic, if the Blues keep the number 19 pick, which they probably will do, they feel confident that they can get a quality center or defensive prospect. They would be ecstatic if the options included center Cole Reshny or defenseman Cameron Reed or Logan Hensler. And both of those players are being thought of in mock drafts as future Blues.
All right. I again, it's hard to dive into these names, and you really lose things after the 10th or 11th pick most years. And so are these guys going to be the game breakers? No. But as we were talking about yesterday, I think there's just the base reason for for Blues fans to be excited is that they got Bolduc at 17. While they obviously got a big name in Dvorsky at 10th overall. In that same draft, we talked about him already, Otto Stenberg and Theo Lindstein, guys who are already ahead of schedule relative to the average NHL prospect, and those are late first-round picks. Juracek, again, mid to late first-round pick. He fell a little bit. He was supposed to be like 11th or 12th that year, I remember. So he was a little bit more value relative to their picking spot. But the bottom line is, whether it's a top spot Schneider was 22nd overall. I mean, this is their ability to pick here should give you a lot of confidence, and maybe that's why I'm catching a little hell on Twitter right now saying Blues fans should be just as excited as Cardinals fans. Maybe there is a reason to be pretty excited if you're a Blues fan more so than a Cardinals fan, because they just keep churning out this young talent.
Well, and the Blues fans have a team that just made the playoffs and played a President's Trophy winning team to the very end. There's other stuff going on. 8 years for Trent Frederic in Edmonton. He gets 8 years and a 3.85 AAV. So Trent Frederic will not hit free agency. I'm kind of surprised. That's a great deal. 8 years and getting $3.85 million a year. I just thought that he was more than a 3.85 AAV guy. But for Trent Frederic, congratulations on getting that deal with the Oilers. I was hoping that he would wind up here.
Yeah, I like that. But yeah, when you're locking a guy in for 8 years, even at that low of an AAV, I think that's a risk for a team like the Blues to take, because it just takes away any flexibility you have. And again, as the cap gets bigger, $4 million is going to get smaller. But still, I think look at just how, $6 million right now this year with the LTIR coming off, that is a weapon for them to use. And so for a team like the Blues, a $4 million deal tying them up for that long, that's too much.
He's 27. I would love to have a guy with some grit and some toughness.
I would too, but they cannot be locking up a guy from 32 to 35 on the back end of that deal for $4 million, just in case he's just not, if he has a couple bad injuries and he's not effective those last 3 years, that's $4 million. It's just dead. That you can't really deal with if you're the Blues.
But the Blues have done that a lot over the years.
They have, but I think they have to avoid
winning teams.
They have, but I think there's just I think that's just the ability for him to just say, I know what kind of player I am, and I'm going to lock in my money now. I just don't think the Blues were going to be able to give him a comparable deal in the same way.
And he probably knew that. Because his agent knows how much he can get from other teams. And that's why he accepted the deal from Edmonton. Chris Johnson of TSN reporting that sources tell him that the Noah Dobson sweepstakes down to either Montreal or Columbus, with the deal expected to come soon. Dobson, a big 25-year-old defenseman, for the Islanders, and this is why bad teams stay bad. You get the first pick in the draft, and you say, oh, we got to get rid of the guy that's going to be a free agent rather than keep him around. It was a high draft choice. They developed the guy. That's not what you do. When you want to be good, you add to the talent that you have. You don't try to replace the talent that you have. You add to the talent that you have. So I think it's just a foolish move on the part of the Islanders.
Yeah, I would agree with that one. It seems like an odd move for them overall. I did just see something, Randy, that I need to point out, because yesterday I gave you credit for laying off a Red Wing. I was proud of you for that.
Thank you.
But I see something here that I need to make fun of the Red Wings for. Listen, okay, so the Blues have announced that their first-round pick is going to be announced by Nikki Glaser. Trailblazing comedian, really big in 2025. She's new. She's hip. She's what people are talking about right now.
Yes.
Kind of like what the Blues organization is now. But for comparison's sake, if we're talking about an organization that hasn't won in 20 years and that has seen, despite the fact that they brought back an old great from their Stanley Cup winning days to be the GM, they've kind of spun their wheels over the last 2 decades. And I think a perfect way to show what an organization who's just spinning their wheels for the last 2 decades is to bring somebody famous from the early 90s to announce their first-round pick. And so while the Blues forward, Nikki Glaser, first-round pick, the Detroit Red Wings have Dave Coulier from, of course, that everyone loves, of course, Full House. But I mean, the show stopped airing in like 1993. It's 2025, and no one listens to Alanis Morissette either. So I feel like you're losing it here on the Dave Coulier there, Red Wings. But again, one franchise that's living in the 90s, another franchise that's moving on to the future.
Yeah, I'll say.
I thought you'd like that. I thought you'd appreciate that.
Oh, man.
And listen, if I was a Red Wing fan, I'd want to be stuck in the 90s too, but you got to move on.
At some point.
You got to move on.
Yeah, they aren't yet. So,
I had to do that. Thank you. Thank you, Samuel Howe.
Oh, yeah. Cut it out.
I do love Dave Coulier. I'm sorry he had to be a tragedy in this one.
Well done. What do you got going on this weekend, sir? Anything big and fun and exciting?
Oh, not really. We're gonna watch City probably losing a hot one against Houston.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully the Cardinals can get your hand down, Wilson. Hopefully the Cardinals can get their road trip started nicely. I am kind of fascinated about what the Blues do. Then that'll be interesting. And then next week we have the development camp. I want to see where Noah Dobson goes. It's not going to be to the Blues, but I am fascinated to see some things happen in the NHL. And obviously, shout out to Ryan Kalkbrenner, who got drafted by the Charlotte Hornets. Yeah. Caleb Love.
Congratulations.
Caleb Love, who signed a 2-year deal with the Portland Trailblazers. And multiple Mizzou players also signing 2-year deals, including my boy, Tamar Bates, signing with the Denver Nuggets. Let's go.
There you go. Go Tamar.
So, yeah, big weekend.
Don't forget, we have Cards Central 365 before and after the Cards and the Guardians today, and then a full weekend of coverage after the Cardinals and Cleveland games. Plus, don't forget the NHL draft tonight. All right, for Wilson and for Matthew, I'm Randy. Thanks to Bernie for joining us, and thanks to you for being a part of the Randy Karraker Show on STL Sports Central. We'll see you Monday morning.
Bang, bang, boom.